My governor, His Excellency Engineer Abdullahi A. Sule, before he became governor in 2019, he was at one time group managing director, in fact, immediate past group managing director of Dangote Sugar. Before then, he was managing director of African Petroleum, well known since oil is really central to the Nigerian economy. And in AP, his is a very unique story because when they took over AP, African Petroleum, they met the company in distress. It had a negative balance sheet of over 40 billion. And within 5 years, between 2001 to 2005, when he was managing director, he was able to turn around, that 40 billion negative to a positive of 5 billion. Now, that is clear, evidence-based benchmark. You come and meet a company, and if you have a company as huge as African Petroleum, one of the things he faced at that time was even, revealing to the public that this is the kind of company that we have. Because if you have 40 billion negative, that automatically means even if you sell AP, African Petroleum, then you sell every asset, everything of it, this company will still be owing 40 billion.
How has that translated to better life for the people of Nasarawa State?
Now, we come back to Nasarawa State. Just before he became governor, what did he do? He got KPMG, the international accounting firm, to do a blueprint for Nasarawa State. That's even when he was contesting. That articulated the challenges of the state, the competitive advantages of the state. Yes, you have land for agriculture, you have proximity to the federal capital, so how can you actually use this proximity the same way Ogun State, the relationship of Ogun to perhaps, Lagos, and maybe New Jersey to New York, or Maryland to Washington, D.C., you can use this proximity to the federal capital. You attract investments. What he did was he articulated what he called NEDS, Nasarawa Economic Development Strategy. And that has been the economic blueprint of Nasarawa State for the last 5 years. And in the last 5 years, he's been able to move the state in 5 years of governance from a state that was initially just an agrarian, civil service state with huge potentials that were untapped to become now, contestably, Nigeria's new investment, frontier. We've had 2 investment summits. In the very first summit, we had a deal room. We instantly generated over 500 million. We have Dangote Sugar Refinery there in Awe, which is the largest in Africa, even bigger than that of Sudan. So you're dealing with opening up the state for prosperity, for industrialization, and for investment. And as we speak today, Nasarawa State stands alone, perhaps, as being the only state or so that has a sovereign wealth fund. The state has a savings account as a sovereign wealth fund. You put back this monies in there, in the state, so you can secure the future. And that brings us back to the first thing I said about exemplifying accountability. You don't just come, for instance, in education, in the last 5 years, education has taken the chunk of the budget, above even the UN benchmark of 20%. The first year, he went to 26%, then 31%, then 36%. And how did you approach education? He did a baseline survey, went and studied over 1,000 public schools and about 400 secondary schools to find out, what usually happens, and maybe I can cap it up there. What usually happens with politicians is you create a school, you establish one that is on the road, and you point people to it. But you need to have a bird's eye view. So you look at the entire educational structure. How many schools exist in my state? What are their challenges? Do you even have qualified teachers? Which ones need to be repaired, and so on and so forth? So what you do becomes something that sets a template for the next administration to come. Because you're not just thinking for your own political gains and pointing to something on the road.
Yes, and this is part of the grand election promises. But let me ask you again. I was just checking the IGR of Nasarawa State, and I don't know, you will have to confirm for us. It's about 2.5 billion monthly. I'm not sure if that's correct. If that's correct, What is the source for your internal, for your IGR?
Well, first and foremost, Nasarawa State is referred to as what they call the home of solid minerals. But before the, and you know, solid minerals is in the exclusive list, so federal government actually sometimes, often always, would just register the mining companies outside of, you know, involvement of the state governments itself. But what happened was when he came, he sort of created some sort of an integrative web between the state and the federal, such that right now, there's an executive order that says if you're setting up maybe a lithium company, what we've been able to do, and you may have heard the Minister of the Solid Minerals, Dele Alake, saying recently, just last week, that Nasarawa State is central to lithium in this particular country. We have the largest lithium company in Nasarawa, local government of Nasarawa State. Now, basically, you block leakages, which usually what people would say. But if you're looking at accountability and transparency, we're using a central billing system. So you harness the IGR into a pool, and then you actually make sure that the natural resources or the mineral resources that you have in your state, like solid minerals, you extract very strong commitment from those who are actually excavating or taking from your particular state that, look, there's social corporate responsibility.
Right.
There are things that you have to do in the state. So blocking leakages, harnessing the IGR through central billing systems, and of course being prudent. Fiscal discipline has been able to move the IGR from where we met it over 400 or 500 million to over 2 billion. That is what is happening right now.
Fantastic. Many thanks.